Statistical inference is a procedure that is used to find out or to estimate the unknown value of the population parameter from the information contained in the sample. Statistical inference is divided into two components. One is the point estimation and other is the interval estimation as far as the estimation is concerned. The statistical inference may also be followed using the testing of hypothesis. So students, there are two ways through which we can estimate the unknown value of the parameter, whether using the point estimation or interval estimation, or we can also set certain assumption about the population parameter under testing of hypothesis. So confidence interval is an estimation procedure for identifying the unknown value of the population parameter. Now we are going to consider the confidence interval for the difference between the two medians. So in the case of two independent samples, a test of the null hypothesis that the difference between the medians of the two relevant population is equal to 0. So the 100 into 1 minus alpha % confidence interval for the difference between the two population medians consists of the possible values of the difference. So we need to calculate the difference for which null hypothesis will be accepted at alpha significance level. The procedure is very much based on Mann-Whitney test. So that means the stringent assumptions about the normality they are not met with the two samples. So we would have to consider the non-parametric approach for that. So the non-parametric alternative for independent sample t-test under the confidence interval for the difference between the two means is the Mann-Whitney test, where we are going to consider the difference between the two population medians. So students, हम assume कर रहे हैं कि आपके two population median का जो difference है that is unknown to us, and we would have to find it, or we would have to estimate that from the information contained in the sample. Now we would be considering the assumptions that we would have to check with our data sets under the confidence interval for difference between the two medians. The first assumption, students, and that we need to consider is that the data consists of two random samples. That means both of the samples has to be random in order to follow the confidence interval estimation approach. So we are assuming that x1, x2, xn is a random sample that is being taken from population 1, and y1, y2 so on up to yn is a random sample that is being considered under population 2. Then the next assumption is that the two samples are independent. If they are not independent, we cannot follow them through the confidence interval for difference between the two medians. The measurement scale of the variables is at least interval. That means the two of the variables has to be continuous in nature. And the last assumption we have had is the distribution function of the two populations are identical, except for a possible difference in the location parameters. Here the location parameter is the difference between the two medians. Now the method, students, basically there are two methods for constructing the confidence interval for the difference between the two medians. One is the graphical approach and other is the arithmetic approach. As far as the graphical approach is concerned, it is quite difficult to identify the unknown value of the parameter, which in our case is mu1, m1 minus M2. So students, it is very difficult to identify or estimate M1 minus M2 through the graphical approach. So we would be following the arithmetic approach, which is slightly more simpler as compared to the graphical approach. Now, as far as the arithmetic approach is concerned, in order to follow it for the confidence interval for difference between the two medians, the values in each sample will be placed in numerical order. Then compute the N1, N2 differences. So students, the next procedure would be that you would have to calculate all possible N1, N2 differences by subtracting each Y value from each X value. So once you got all possible differences of Y values and of X values, we would have to arrange the differences in order of magnitude from smallest to the largest. So once you have got all the differences, you arrange them from smallest to the largest. The next thing we would have to do is to calculate W alpha by 2. So it will be obtained from the Mann-Whitney quantile table corresponding to N1, N2 and alpha by 2, where 1 minus alpha is the desired confidence coefficient. Now, whenever you talk about confidence interval, you would have to calculate two values. One is the lower value of the confidence interval and other is the upper value of the confidence interval. So the lower limit is denoted as L of the confidence interval. It would be calculated as W alpha by 2th smallest difference, and the upper value U is the W alpha by 2th largest difference. So it can be said that we are at least 100 into 1 minus alpha % confident that the difference in population medians is somewhere between L and U inclusive. So these were the two values that we would have to calculate using the two different samples, and once we have identified both of them, we would be 100 into 1 minus alpha % sure that our unknown value of the population parameter is expected to lie within those two limits L and U.